Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second day of our cyber threat series. We're just going to wait a few minutes for a few more people to join, and then we'll kick off for today. But thank you for joining so far, and I'll come back to you in a minute or so. So we're going to kick off. So good morning, everyone. As I said, welcome to the second day of our cyber threat series. Over the course of the 3 days, you would have heard from industry experts as we take a deep dive into the ever-changing threat landscape, current trends, and more importantly, kind of get knowledge share on best practice on how to optimize your cyber posture. And that's something we're definitely going to concentrate on today. And for today's session, we're going to be focusing on advanced threats analysis and a response, and I'm joined by Aaron and Nilesh from our managed security division, SecurityHQ. Before we do that, I'm just going to quickly go over some housekeeping. So please remain muted throughout the session. It'll allow for more focus on the slides. If you do have any questions though, please ask questions far away throughout the session in the chat box. We'll collate them at the end, and then we'll ask all of the speakers on the call. The session is being recorded, like all of the sessions over the next 2-3 days. So it'll be sent to you via email tomorrow morning. So if you do miss it or you want to pass it on to your peers, then you'll get that recording. And this session will be interactive, so there'll be 2 or 3 polls popping up throughout the webinar. Please make use of them, so hopefully tailor the Q&A right at the end. So on to today's session. So as mentioned, we're focused on advanced analysts and threat hunting. And later today, we'll hear more from SecurityHQ around incident response, and a later session from SOPOS around network and cloud. So hopefully you can join those sessions as well. So back to this morning, we are delighted to have Aaron and Nilesh from our Managed Security Services Division, SecurityHQ. Bytes have been partnered with SecurityHQ since 2015, so have become tightly integrated across all channels since that point. Our kind of joint managed services actually stretch from SOC, NOC, threat intel, endpoint, vulnerability scanning, managed firewall, and many more. Today's session will actually be focused on more of a knowledge share, but if you are interested to know more about our services, then do please reach out. Some of the discussion points we can expect from today from Aaron and Nilesh are key focus points around threat hunting and why it's important. What are the key areas to actually hunt for? Understanding the analysis, and some core examples of threat hunting capabilities. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Aaron and Nilesh to carry on. As mentioned.
Thanks, Luke. Welcome everybody. Let me start sharing my screen.
Please, if you have any questions, we can answer them at the end. Thank you.
Yeah, Aaron, over to you. If you can start, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. So I'll take the first few slides here and kind of look through, what threat hunting is and how we can, leverage the analysis behind threat hunting to kind of help us with, future response engagements and also future threat hunting engagements as well, and some kind of examples about how we can leverage and harness threat intelligence to kind of aid us with threat hunting. So I guess threat hunting is kind of a popular term at the moment. It's been gaining kind of traction over the last maybe 2 to 3 years. Everybody's got a different idea about what it means. So just here is a quote from SANS themselves. What they're defining it as. So for me, how we see it, it's a process. It's not a one-off activity that just takes place. It's something that is there, it's to be used, driven by strategy. We'll go through that in a moment. Is it proactive or reactive, how you're doing it? But the ultimate goal is actually there to find, you know, adversaries on in or your network that you potentially don't know about at this moment in time. Or you have, you know, you've received no notifications about anything, but you're just out there to investigate some hypotheses and, you know, like I said, talk about the strategy as well. So as we move on to the next slide, we'll do a quick comparison between the differences with proactive threat hunting and reactive threat hunting. And you know what we do within SecurityHQ is very much proactive. And we'll just talk about some of those points. So proactive threat hunting is very much driven by your strategy as a company or an organization. So it could be, you know, you, for example, might focus on any adversarial threat actor that's known to target your geographical location or your industry. That's just one example, and you'll focus on that. With proactive threat hunting, you typically find that there are less pressures to find results because you're not actually out to confirm anything. So you're just there, you know, really kind of having a look around, less pressure to give that answer to management, which actually reduces confirmation bias. And we'll talk about that in the reactive part. And when you're doing it proactive, you tend to have a wider scope naturally, because, you know, look, if we look at the reactive side, when you react to an incident or you have an instant response engagement, you would typically focus your threat hunting activities based on what you know. So for example, a particular server or two servers have been compromised, you will tend naturally to focus your kind of efforts there based on, I don't know, any IOCs that you may have seen, or you know it's been compromised, and just kind of maybe have a slightly narrower scope. When you're looking proactive, you can kind of cast your net a bit wider because of the above mentioned reasons. It's driven by your strategy, you have less pressures, and you don't have that confirmation bias. Which effectively all of those three things contribute to one thing. It's more time for your analysis and feeding that back into the SOC. And the feedback part is, you know, is crucial, because that's how we improve our detection. So we have enhanced detection. That's the first thing. It's about improving your response to future incidents because you've seen it before, or you know how to investigate that type of incident or that investigation you're actually working on. But mostly it's about understanding how you can threat hunt better and more efficiently. So I've kind of touched on both proactive and reactive there, but just to go over one of the things with reactive, and it's something we see quite common, is threat hunting is kind of seen as you do it once you know there's been, you know, an incident or an alert within your organization, maybe an alert triggered on SIEM or EDR, and the focus will be very much in that kind of area. And management, you know, top management will want answers naturally. They need to feed back, right? They need to feed back what's happened, what's the answers, what's the impact, you know, where are we, what's our exposure? So you kind of have less time to really dig deep to understand, you know, and we'll go through that in a moment as well on that roadmap. So just want to give some quick examples there, proactive versus reactive, and it'll be, you know, be really interesting to get the thoughts of the audience on the webinar today, you know, what's being taken as an approach within their teams as well. So on the next slide here, we'll just kind of look at.
Yes. So before the next slide, I would also want to highlight one more point, is that you still have to do a threat hunting. Well, Aaron highlighted that it always has to be proactive. But at the same time, let's say whenever there is an incident happens, you still have to do a threat hunting to a comprehensive review of your existing, somebody to go through all the artifacts of the incidents and answer the key questions which the management is going to ask, right? Like, you know, whether there's a data exfiltration, or do you see there is a command and control being established by an adversary? So you have to establish all those hypotheses. So whenever there is a big incident happen, let's say, you know, you identify that there is a compromise of an endpoint that has happened into an organization. You find that hacker is able to completely compromise and be able to get the admin level access onto the machine. High chances that there could be a larger impact. So then you have to start ensuring that, you know, you create those hypotheses. Check the first hypothesis could be whether there was a data exfiltration. Second hypothesis could be whether the attacker has established a command and control center. So for all these hypotheses, you again go back, which is a kind of a reactive threat hunting, but it still has to has to happen to confirm that you have complete visibility of the impact of the incident.
Yeah, valid point, Dinesh. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so typically these are just some examples, typical kind of areas what you would like to hunt for. Okay, so indicators of compromise, IOCs. Everyone extremely familiar with an IOC, an IP address, hash, URL, registry key, whatever it might be. So you can go through that. You can even kind of automate that quite nicely as well to kind of take that off of the analyst's hands to help them kind of focus more on the analysis side of it. So like we mentioned before, the TTPs, as we start to work further up the pyramid of pain when it comes to threat hunting. So IOCs, obviously, yes, number one. And then for number two, like we just mentioned, so TTPs. So now we're talking more focused based on, what is that threat actor known to do? What does this adversary who targets my industry or my geographical location, how do they like to operate? And you will focus on that behavior, and then you'll go out and start to look around, within your logs. It could be proxy, firewall, EDR, DNS, Active Directory, wherever it might be. You start to go and look and understand and kind of find out some of those TTPs. Number three, we also, one of the things that does crop up is anomalies within our environment, right? So it might not necessarily be an incident or an alert at this moment in time, but something that we've seen actually previously, quite common, is poor practice when it comes to administration of servers, right? A couple of examples, people changing passwords within a single bash command on Unix servers, for example, and that password is stored unsecurely, plain text, within the bash history, within shell history, things like that. And that's very easy to go and do, right? It's very easy to go and prove. A simple grep of bash history files for standard passwords like welcome or welcome123, password123. We'll pull all those out, and we treat those as anomalies. It shouldn't be there. It's a process violation. So we treat that as an anomaly. So you can highlight those things as well before they become a threat. And then just unknown insider threats, basically. So we know our insiders. I think everybody knows how to circumvent or control, and that's why one of the elements of threat hunting is to actually look at that as well. So the bottom two, anomalies and unknown insider threats, is more focused on that's really kind of, we have to know the environment. We're not just talking hash matches or URL matches in our proxy. We're actually now talking about, you really understand the environment. Where your users might be able to let's say, for example, leak data. It could be through auto forwarding rules on your email gateway, or it could be maybe someone's been hammering the print server recently with loads of print requests. It's about looking there and kind of trying to identify those unknown insider threats as well before they become something bigger. Yeah. Anything you want to add on that, Dinesh?
No, I guess, Aaron, you covered it. The most important point I would want to highlight here is the detection of anomalies. That is something which needs historical artifacts and somebody who has a good understanding of the environment. So traditionally, we always want the same threat hunters to be performing those activity periodically, consistently across the organizations, because they will know what has happened in the past and what is the known behavior and versus the unknown behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then as we move on to the next slide, I mentioned it just briefly at the start. So we talk about this kind of journey, right? So we talk about threat hunting or any instant response engagement, treat it as a journey. So the first thing we're going to do when it comes to threat hunting and instant response, what we're going to do, we're going to sweep those IOCs, right? So we mentioned it on the slide before. We've obtained our hashes, our IPs, whatever it might be. It could be from intelligence. It could be from we've had an alert, so we're actually in an IR stage now, and we're pushing those IOCs that we're grabbing and we're putting them through. Are you stopping at that point? And this is something we'll discuss as well. Who is stopping here, for example? But there's much more to go. So as we continue along that kind of journey, which is what the road here is trying to depict, are you then doing your IOC sweeps? Okay, that's fine. And then moving on to actually searching for those TTPs, trying to understand those TTPs. So like, okay, fine. I've had, for example, a notification that my company has ended up on a criminal forum. Someone's proven and shown data to show that compromise one of my public facing servers. I can see the host name there. I can see the shell outputs, and they're advertising it, access. Okay, fine. What do you do about that? Are you actually just trying to look on that host, or actually trying to understand, okay, well, this actor is known to be doing this sort of thing. How have they done that? Are you looking and say, okay, well, let me take those logs, let me understand it. Maybe they've got, persistence through a web shell. Maybe they've done malicious DLL sideloading on your IIS server, for example, giving them that access. So are you trying to understand the TTPs, which further progresses you through your kind of threat hunting and incident response engagements as well? And then the third part of this journey is, okay, well, you've swept the IOCs, you've tried to understand kind of TTPs, and you can map them against, known threat actors, known adversaries. Are you trying to go to, your management and your team and saying, okay, we believe, and it's very difficult. It's a very difficult thing to do, which is why we say possible attribution, because it's never you can never be 100% sure. But are you trying to come up with that attribution that you can maybe safeguard yourself in the future to say, all of these things we've seen, the IOCs we've observed, the TTPs we've observed, the kind of attack patterns, we believe it's, APT, XYZ, for example. And then you can then follow on that. You can say, okay, well, that APT, we've seen a lot of activity. You start to step back. You see a bit more maybe based on the TTPs that you have and their possible, their previous attacks as well. And that leads on to the kind of almost the key one that I mentioned again on the earlier slide, the point number 4 here, is then are you then completing those first 3 stages and then feeding that back into the SOC? So once you've taken time to understood the TTPs you've observed and perhaps come up with some possible attribution, and I'm not saying it has to be definite, but some possible attribution, then you're learning about this attack pattern, you're learning about these actors, and you're going to feed that back into your SOC and your CERT teams to say, okay, guys, girls, this is what we're doing now. We need to focus on these areas, and this is how we're going to progress threat hunting and our incident response. So again, this is more high level, kind of a brief, the importance of analysis and where are you stopping within your teams at the moment. And yes, there will be some constraints and some dependencies on going this far, but I think it's just good to highlight the importance of going the whole journey rather than just stopping, sweeping for IOCs, resource constraints, etc. That happens. We are only able to sweep for IOCs because it takes time and experience to go further, which is why green is the easiest, and we go through into orange, which is getting up the skill level, which is very difficult and time intensive. And that's kind of wrapping up there, Nilesh, for that. So I know you've got some examples on the coming slides around some of the threat hunts and things. So I'll hand over to you now, and you can go through those.
Okay, thanks, Arun. So guys, we'll quickly talk about some of the examples that our threat hunters have done in the past and which helped us to identify the attacks, which could not be detected with the normal, with the signature based and with the standard use case based alerts. Okay. So we'll start with the first example, which was for detection of the suspicious account activity. So this is one of the threat hunting theme that our threat hunters execute, where they execute different kind of threat hunting queries to identify all such suspicious account behavior activities. So the example I'm talking about is of an outlier behavior. So here you can see in the screen, I have highlighted this in red color as well. So generally what happens is everybody keeps focusing on to the top talkers. Here also in this case, of course, you have to do an investigation of the top talkers and the top guys who is making all the noise to understand what they are up to and what kind of activities they are doing. But at the same time, equally important are the guys who are whose behavior is least, because that's where we have seen are the most sophisticated attacks are happening. Like all these APTs are highly sophisticated. They know their skills. And they are not the noisier ones. So what they will do is, one single attack, and then it will be absolutely no noise, completely under the hood, absolute stealth. So this is one of the example where one of our threat hunter identified one single instance of of an IS account, username IS, where he identified that there was some kind of an activity from this account which has not been seen in the past for a very long time. So this is where the hunt hit started, and he then dig into deeper to really understand what this guy was doing. And then he identified that this guy created an event ID which is 46224, which stands for the account successful account logged in, along with the type 10, which indicates that it was a remote interactive logon. Now, this is absolutely suspicious, right? Why would a service account be logging in interactively suddenly, right? So this calls for an investigation, and this is where now the threat hunter has gone into the investigation mode to really identify what was happening behind this activity. After he drills down, he identifies that this activity was identified one of the hosts. He identified what are the other associated artifacts that he can collect as what was happening on that machine. And there he also saw that there was an identification of one single virus alert, but the virus, because the AV has detected it, so it did not trigger anything because it was AV which was able to identify that there was some malicious file. Malicious file was blocked, and that's what happens, right? Because antivirus will keep on sending a lot of alerts, and the action you see that it is being blocked, we don't take any action, right? It dies down there. But because of this threat hunting activity, we were able to go back in the past, identify that there were other associated activities, and that really helps us to understand that yes, this was something fishy, something suspicious, and this called for an incident investigation. And this is where our SOC raised an incident, and they created an incident out of it. There was a full scope investigation after this, and we really identified the root cause as why it happened. Okay. This was one of the example of a successful threat hunting activity. I'll talk about another activity. So this again, our threat hunters went ahead with another theme, which is identification of malicious network connections that are happening into the network. Okay. Now all of these are part of the proactive threat hunting activity. Okay. None of this is reactive. Okay. And because we are doing this proactively, we were able to identify the attacks which could have just which could have just been bypassed. Okay. Now, this one is for the network connection. So this is where we identified that there was an outlier behavior. Now, compared to the other earlier one, where we could see that there was a very straightforward outlier behavior of some kind of an activity from an account which has not performed any activity for a long time. But here, with this view, the threat hunter were able to visually understand that there were some instances of a single internal IP communicating back to the external IP, and that also on a very suspicious port like 80,000 and 8080. Now this is another successful hit for our threat hunting queries. Now again, you can see that the threat actor was able to identify this purely based on the visual identification, right? If you do a threat queries and if you get this output in a tabular format, most of the time that will get missed. But with the help of this visual clue, he was able to further identify that this calls for an investigation. And he did that, and so that is the first step. That the moment you suspect something, you have to go back, drill down the alert, find out what was happening. And here you can see that for this IP address, there was a checkpoint. He identified that it was detected by checkpoint. There was a block for it, but block was for only one IP address, because with the IOC it was able to identify that this was talking to a known malicious IP address. But along with that, when the team did further investigation, they were able to identify additional IP addresses which were successfully able to connect back. Okay. Now this called for further investigation, and SOC dig deep into it, and we were able to create a very successful security incident out of it. Now, all of this, both these incidents, security incidents, were purely created because of the proactive threat hunting that the team is doing on a periodic basis, and that's what we always recommend to go ahead and do a proactive threat hunting, because we can't be waiting for incident to occur and then go back and then check in the history as what has happened, right? Aaron, this is what you were highlighting, and this is what you were trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing as well, I think it's worth mentioning is that, sometimes, we look at our advanced tooling, next gen this and next gen that, and it's very true. But actually, sometimes it comes to threat hunting, and we spoke about it previously in blogs and white papers and whatever else we've done. It's not always about big tools when it comes to threat hunting, unless it's about actually dumping the data and getting hands-on with it and manipulating it in something so simple like Excel pivot tables, right? And also put it into reporting tools, and having that visualization to help actually bring up and bring out the underlying offenders that you would never see otherwise, because there's maybe there's no rule in place to detect that sort of thing. It needs to be visually shown in front of your eyes. Say, okay, that's not actually right. That's not what should be happening, and you can dig down further. So yeah, I think it's just important to mention that actually we do spend probably quite a lot of time, don't we, in log lines and data dumps from SIEM and data dumps from wherever else, rather than just focusing on one tool. It's not about that, is it? It's a lot more than that.
Absolutely. I also want to quickly talk about the importance of writing advanced queries, and this is something that really helps our threat hunter to ensure that they are doing this threat hunting activities consistently across the customers. It's very important that all these advanced queries are, you're testing it on a periodic basis, but at the same time fine-tuning it to ensure that there are less false positives, because end of the day, threat hunters are again humans, right? So if it starts giving a lot of false positives, they will waste their energy, and instead of concentrating on really the places where they have to, they should be investigating, they'll be focusing on something, and it will be complete diversion and the waste of energy. So it's important that all these threat hunting advanced queries are fine-tuned on a regular basis. This is one of the example of advanced queries that we have deployed. This is to detect connections to domain generation algorithm. As you know, domain generation algorithm so most of the hackers to avoid detection from all this next generation tool, they keep on changing the domains to which they are connecting back to hide their CNC control. But that's also one of the behavior which ideally we should be able to identify that. So we have written a separate threat hunting queries to only detect any connections which is going to such DGS account. And yes, we are getting hit. So it's not just the queries for the sake of writing queries, but it's really is helping us to proactively identify the attacks in the environment. Okay. So these are the examples, and Aaron talked about the importance, how to do it. I just quickly walk you through the examples of as how the threat hunting happens, and how, what has to be prepared, how those investigations happens, and how these incidents are raised following the threat hunting queries. One of the questions that that Aaron and I were discussing was, what are the building blocks for developing advanced threat hunting capabilities, right? This again is always a journey, even though we have these threat hunting capabilities in-house for quite some time, and because we are privileged enough to have a large team of threat hunters, we still keep on improvising. We still keep on ensuring that we have those capabilities to detect all those latest attacks. So here we will quickly talk about the building blocks that will help us to detect those advanced capabilities. The most important part is the visualization, and I just show you the example of a visualization also, right? Human eyes are trained. In fact, we are trained to take visual clues, and that's one of the reason why BI tools and technologies are so common, right? So we talk about the graphs, we talk about the BI tools giving multiple visual interfaces. So that is very much important. So whenever so the threat hunting platform should be able to give you a visual identification. You should be able to link back multiple data points. Okay. So it should not be just like, you're sending a query and you're getting a plain Jane output. Sooner or later you will get bored of doing the same thing, and then maybe you'll not be able to detect some of those connections which are very important to part of threat hunting activities. Second important part is the playbooks. These are really important. Both the playbook should include the advanced search queries. That is the most important part. But at the same time, the moment you get hit, right, a threat hunter should have a clear path as what are the next steps that he should be doing when he got a successful hit, right? Because every action, every moment that you spend subsequently could have a potential impact in terms of damage that it could be causing. And this is especially true for the proactive threat hunting, because here we are not waiting for the incident to happen, but here we are waiting. Here we are proactively ensuring that we detect all those attacks which got bypassed somehow. Third important point is the collaboration. Now, this is again, we wanted to talk about it, and Aaron already highlighted, right? You have to connect back with the SOC, because SOC team are the people who has the visibility, real-time visibility as what is happening. They know what is normal versus the abnormal. Now, it's not only about the SOC, but also your IT team members, your networking guys, your server guys. They are the ones who know what ideally shouldn't be happening and what ideally should be running in your environment. Any outlier that you identify, anything suspicious that you find, instead of you going and digging down further, it's important that you quickly collaborate, talk it out, and get their feedback. So that will help you to really focus your energies instead of diving into the deep sea. Another important point is to see a big picture. When you say big picture, that means the moment you got a hit, don't restrict yourself only to that particular incident or that particular log source. You try to connect. Your objective is to connect as many dots as possible, so that could really help you to understand the real impact that the incident could cause, or the impact that would have already happened. So try to connect additional log sources, related log sources. Try to traverse through the different network. Go back in the past if that is really required, because that will.
I think Nilesh might have just cut off there.
I think he might have done.
Mid-flow. See if he comes back on a couple of minutes. Whilst we wait for Nilesh, there was a question, Aaron. If we can just cover that now. That's right.
Sure.
So it's in kind of three parts. So the first part was, I imagine SecurityHQ have a threat engine stroke database, which is dynamic. How does this compare with other providers? Is it in the top quadrant in the Gartner report or any other industry-based reporting? Second, do you want to answer that one? Then we go to the next bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm assuming when we talk about threat engines and database, we're talking around maybe a threat intelligence platform. Reading between the lines. So I think, yes, absolutely. So yeah, I mean the platform that we use is industry leading. So it's Digital Shadows, okay, that's used within our offering, and it is obviously dynamic. Yes, so any adversarial activity is updated there. That we have our analysts that work on that 24/7 within our advisory team that are constantly pushing advisories based on updates that come as well from that platform, and then we ingest anything and everything in terms of IOC's intelligence that gets ingested, and we're able to use that, which is what we mentioned. I think I mentioned in slide 1 around we can really automate the IOC part of the threat hunts, because you can leverage API integrations between the TI platforms and SIEM or EDR. You can pull down those indicators, which is what I believe you're kind of referring to here a little bit, and take that kind of load off of you and allow your analysts the time to focus on, you know, the likes what Nilesh was just showing. They're looking for the, you know, doing long tail analysis, looking for the least common occurring thing within your environment, for example. You know, if an analyst is spending time processing IOCs, they're not going to have the time maybe to get around to that part. So I hope that answers that question. The first one, the answer is yes. It's yes.
Cool. Welcome back, Nilesh. We're just covering one of the questions. So if you just want to throw up the last slide you were just on, and we can just finish off the question. Secondly, do you have any stats to show how long it takes to identify, investigate, and eradicate threats?
Nilesh, do you want to take that one?
You're just on mute, Nilesh.
There is some Murphy's laws coming into the picture. Okay, Aaron, you can take this question. Okay.
Yeah, so I think it varies. Okay, so it varies. So within our back end, so we have our SecurityHQ incident response and analytics platform that supports the back of our managed service. Okay, and then any activity, be it threat hunt, be it incident, alert, all the way through to incident response closure. Those tickets are updated with those timestamps. So all of that data is collated within that platform.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but if that was a question that was, yeah, you would like some averages or some medians, and I'm sure we can give that data if that person's interested, for sure.
Great. And thirdly was just saying that I like what Nilesh said about keeping us updated as we need to report to stakeholders, which I think reporting is probably one of the most key parts of a managed service and the SecurityHQ offering, and tailoring that, like you said, to the different levels of people that need to see what type of report. So that was the third point. So thank you for that question. Really great. We'll crack on with the slides and then we'll go to the other questions we got as well.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks, Duke. Okay. So, what we also wanted to talk about is when do we call it as a successful hunt, right? When do we really start digging deep into the investigation and then call it as an incident and qualify that as an incident? First is the organizational risk. You really have to understand the threat. After you did a threat hunting, which query was hit, and what is the real reason, and what is the real risk because of which could have arisen when you got it. Does that indicate a data leakage incident? Does that indicate a successful account compromise? Does it indicate a successful command and control being established? So depending on the organizational risk, you have to go ahead and check whether it qualifies for an incident. Second important point is the impact. What is the real impact of this of the incident which is under the investigation? Is it a localized? Is it widespread? Is it affecting only some subset of employees, or it's affecting all of them? So the impact is another important criteria. Third is the timeline. This is something which get missed most of the time, because when you find a successful hit, you channelize your energies to really understand what is happening, right? But what has happened in the past, that really gives you a lot of clue as how it happened, why it happened, and what is the widespread impact of that particular incident. So you should consider timeline as well. And the fourth is the threat type. Is it a normal external attacker where somebody is just running some of the automated tools, or is it an advanced APT attack, or you are able to attribute it to some of the known APT groups. So depending on the threat type, you should then be classifying your incidents, and accordingly you should go ahead and take your next steps. Maybe a next step could also be one is definitely the first step is to containment, then the incident response. Then the same threat hunting activity can also trigger your reactive threat hunting activity, where you go back and again come out with the hypothesis, and the whole objective would be to prove those hypotheses wrong. Yeah.
Okay, Luke. So that's all from my side. We are now open for questions. Yeah.
Perfect. Let me just reshare my screen. So whilst we just wait for a few more questions to come in, there are a few to answer. Just wanted to give you a quick overview of a free assessment trial of our SecurityHQ's managed detection response service, so managed SOC. So something that's really key to the service offerings from SecurityHQ, and something that we're able to organize. Sorry, let's take this off my screen. Something to able to organize for you if you're interested to know more. So what's in it for you? It'll be a 30-day trial of the actual managed security operations center from SecurityHQ. So you'll get 24/7 visibility of the threats throughout that 30 days of your environment, or the part of the environment we wish to kind of choose to move forward with. Throughout that time, you'll be treated as you are as a full-on customer. So you receive the training, you receive the analytics, the threat hunting, as Aaron and Lesh have gone through, the reports, and the reports that tailor for each of the different stakeholders, and some training on the actual platform. So the managed SOC is powered by IBM QRadar, which is obviously top right of Gartner. And then we have, or SecurityHQ has their own bespoke systems which can show you the threats, the SLAs. So if you are interested in that 30-day trial, then please do reach out to myself or anyone at Bytes, your account manager, and we can have a conversation about how to move that forward. But that should be a great offer for you to utilize. So just on to the Q&A. So first one, how can I harness proactive threat hunting, enhanced detection, and incident response?
Good question. Good
Question.
question.
Take that one.
Okay, so proactive threat hunting, enhanced detection, and instant response, right? Okay. So how do you harness them? Well, I think you harness them by being proactive. We mentioned it in the earlier sections of the slide. So being proactive is good for many reasons, and just if we link it with enhanced detection, it's going to enable you, being proactive, to have that more time, like we said, a wider scope. And by having that wider scope and the less pressures and the more time for analysis, if we link it to enhanced detection, you will find gaps. You might find gaps in detection, for example, whereby you haven't covered a particular technique or tactic, right? So that's how you're going to harness that. So your threat hunting will draw out results. It could be anomalies within the environment, like we said. It could be unknown insider threat activity that we said, or it could just be simple IOCs or TTPs. And by drawing those out, by being proactive, not waiting for that alarm to ring, like Nilesh said, we don't try not to be reactive. You can enhance your detection in advance. And if we talk about incident response engagements and how to enhance incident response, what we typically see with customers and especially within our service, it's becoming that kind of that threat hunter mindset. You naturally become curious, and by becoming curious, you tend to learn your environment a lot faster. And by knowing your environment, that's when you are going to be able to respond better to an incident. So, as a team, for example, if you are conducting regular threat hunting activity, you will have a good understanding of how certain applications work on certain application servers, what they do and don't do, for example. And then if it comes to an instant response engagement where you've actually, you flicked the switch and said, we're in investigation instant mode here, you've built up a bit of a knowledge base around, okay, we know about this, we know about that, this is not normal, we need to be focused over here. So for me, everything comes back to being proactive and actually having the time and the less pressure and the hypothesis, like Nilesh has mentioned a few times, and having that wider scope to bring that all in together, harness it together, improve your enhanced detection or enhance your detection, and also improve your response.
Cool, thank you. Great question. One other. All of the information is great on threat hunting, really relevant. But any tips for convincing my management team about the importance of threat hunting?
I can take that one, Aaron.
Please, Nash, yeah, for sure.
So it's a known fact that hackers or the attackers are always one step ahead of everybody, right? Because that's what they live for. That's what they, and there is a whole lot of army behind those guys to really identify all those gaps, because there are a lot of motivations for them to do that. So attacks will definitely keep on happening. There are technologies which are able to detect those, maybe with the help of signatures, with the help of outliers also, but technology also has a limitation, right? And then in the SOC, we build a lot of use cases. So the industry standard says we can detect 80% of the attack with the help of technologies. And then you harness those technologies to write advanced use cases, and we take that number from 80% to up to 98%. Okay, but then you still have those 2% of gap where the attacks can still happen. So attacks are going to happen, and this is what the industry has now accepted, that we have to assume that there is an assumed breach. That's the mindset that the SOC has to live with. That always they are under the attack. Attacks are happening, and there are chances that the attack has happened. Okay. Now the next point is how quickly we can identify those attacks and how quickly we can take those remedial actions. Do the incident response. In earlier times, maybe just 2 years or 3 years back of time, having a threat hunter was a privilege, which only the big guys, the big banks could afford to do that. But nowadays, it's the mandatory role that every SOC should have. A dedicated threat hunter, part of every shift, it's a mandatory role, and that has been accepted by everybody, not only the industry, but also the and also the big guys. So that's the reality. The attacks are going to happen. The threat actors will find the ways to bypass. So we have to up our game and to ensure that we proactively hunt them down.
And I think if I may, Luke, just add one thing on there to Nilesh's great answer. It's about changing the stance for me. So it's about, typically security teams tend to be on the back foot. Historically, we tend to be on the back foot because it could be resource constraints, it could be technology constraints, whatever it might be. So it's about changing that stance now. So we need to go on the front foot. I'm not saying let's be offensive, because offensive security is a whole other side, right? So, but I'm talking about, when I say front foot, we're talking about that proactiveness, going out there, identifying those gaps before they get to that stage where you actually find yourself in an instant response on a bridge with 20 people at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's about changing that stance from the back foot to the front foot. And for me, that's the message. That's the message that needs to be conveyed. It's about just stance, as well as everything that Les showed as well. Just want to add that on.
Great, thank you. And maybe just a quick follow on to that. And we touched on it earlier around processing IOCs. Sometimes the processing of those IOCs takes too long. Do you have any suggestions on how to kind of remove this overhead or kind of lower that overhead so we can focus on the more detailed analysis you guys have gone through?
Yeah, I think yes, absolutely. So yeah, processing IOCs from any source, it can be time intensive for more than one reason. Just because you might receive an advisory from even from us that has, for example, I don't know, 25 hashes or 25 IP addresses you need to process. Or you might have something from the security authorities that maybe has hundreds. It takes time, and you need to put it into maybe SIM, maybe EDR, whatever other tools you might have. So the key for us with that is it's automation, and it's not just about pulling it down via API and just pushing it to SIM, EDR, or whatever else. Pushing it to proxy. We're not even talking about SOAR at this point. We're talking about getting it down and having input validation is key, right? So as analysts, we're humans, like we touched on, we're all humans and we make mistakes. So what we see commonly is, for example, an MD5 hash will get processed as a SHA-256, and that will get processed in the wrong field. So your SIM, for example, might not know where to look for it because it doesn't match what the log is showing. So it's about input validation, sanitization, just automation, pull it down, clean it, push it to SIM, push it to EDR, whatever tools you might have. Take that away from analysts. Don't let them think about it, and let them focus on the more strategic side of it. Like we said, TTPs, attribution, the more detailed hunts that will get you the best results effectively. I don't know, Nilesh, if you want to put anything on top of that.
No, I think Aaron, you have covered, and what I can say is that there are some more tips and tricks which are available on our website. We have there is an article published on threat hunting. In fact, Aaron has written the article. It's a great article that I would request everybody to go ahead and go through that. That will give you a lot of tips and tricks as how to improve on your threat hunting activities.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Great. Thank you both. So I think we're going to have to end the presentation, run out of time for more questions, but if there's anything else, then please do follow up directly and we can answer those. And if you did want to read that threat report from Aaron, then feel free to also reach out. Thank you, Aaron and Lanesh, for today. Really great content. And actually, we got part 2 from Bytes and SecurityHQ this afternoon, where we'll be looking at more of the incident response. So today we've gone over the analysis, the detection. Our CISO, Steve Marshall, on SecurityHQ will go more around how businesses can improve the speed of incident response, the next stage. So hopefully you can join us for that. If you can't, as said, the recordings will be available, and this recording will be sent to you tomorrow morning. But thank you for today, and have a nice afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Good.